start recording so Dennis doesn't have to message me and remind me to start recording the meeting this week. So, yeah, only took 2 months of this to remember that. So, anyway, let's see, a couple minutes after, so we'll go ahead and get started. I hope everybody had a nice weekend, got out and enjoyed what was really a beautiful weekend, and we're excited to have a great speaker with us this afternoon. One thing I did want to mention is if you should have received an email. I know I got it on Saturday. The Rotary Convention, as you know, has gone virtual starting next Saturday, running through the 26th. And if you haven't checked it out, there's a lot of great sessions, both the the general sessions. There's featured breakouts, and those are not only in June, but extend through July, actually. There will be a virtual House of Friendship as well. So there's a lot of really good things. There's even a walking challenge that you can take part in. So, and it's all of it is free as being a member of Rotary International. So encourage you, if you haven't checked that out, to do so. I think it'd be a really nice opportunity. A lot of times the convention is in some far-flung place that's fabulous to go to, but also difficult to get away to. So it's a nice opportunity to get to experience an RI convention without having to literally leave your house. So that, as I said, that starts up on Saturday, the 20th. So you can, if you haven't seen the email, you can certainly go to the RI site, and that will have all of the information there. And then just a reminder that the 29th was going to be a 5th Monday. At this time, we're not really going to plan any specific activity for that. So the 29th will just be a free day for you to enjoy. And then, and then in July, you get Matt. So, the days of having to deal with me are dwindling, and the fortunes of the club are improving here very soon. So
be careful, Sean. There's flexibility where we may change the the officer role somehow or something.
Those bylaws are very clear as to the term of the president and when it ends. So with those announcements, let's jump right into Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Bradley.
Sure. Hey, Sean, before I get started, can you unlock the chat? You know how to?
Let me make sure it is. Yeah, it's unlocked. You should be able to get into it now. Actually, here, I went the wrong way.
It's open.
Now it's unlocked. Yeah, I was trying to unlock everything and I locked it all.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you very much. So I had a chance to read the June issue of the Rotarian, as I'm sure all of you have. And let's see, I can't pick on tables. And I have, I know who I see in my top row, but I have no idea who you see in your top row. So we're just going to open this up. Who can tell me what a Rotary Fellowship is?
You're talking the Rotary Peace Fellowship or just fellowship in general?
No, it's the term is Rotary Fellowships.
I can answer that, I think.
Okay.
Rotary Fellowships are groups of like-minded people who get together because they have a common hobby or interest of some kind or whatever. And and there's all sorts of different things that skydiving and motorcycles and gardening and whatever.
Eric, so Kelly saved all of you $1. So let me just rattle off some. I was aware of a snow ski Rotary Fellowship and a golfing one, but there's 4x4 vehicles, there's bird watching, bowling, curling, cycling, doll lovers, jazz, LGBT, rowing, yoga, surfing, table tennis. So it's on the second to last page of the June issue, where they list all the different fellowships. And who can tell me one article that was in the June issue? Let's see, by Lisa's look on her face, I don't think she read the magazine.
Patrick,
I need to develop a poker face.
Patrick,
Yes, sir.
This is Matt. One of the benefits of being at home is you can pull it off your desk. So
Yeah.
here's one on page 28. It just clicked. The photo contest got talking about his award-winning photographs, and that's one of the articles in the
That's
June
one of the
issue.
article. Very good. So there were every June, I think it is, the Rotary magazine has a contest, a photo contest, and the first through third place, plus probably a half a dozen honorable mentions, were in the June issue. Who can tell me what the photo is of the first place photo? Nobody? Matt can't find it fast enough. So it's a picture of a volcano at night, and it almost doesn't look real. So take a look at it. It's about in the middle of the
yeah.
magazine. Okay, so do we have any happy dollars today?
I got a big one.
Go for it. By the way, nice background.
You like that rock? It's about 100 yards from my house, where the trees were planted last year. On Saturday, my number 2 son, Paul Charles, and his wife had to evacuate their Sheep Mountain home because of a lightning causing forest fire. I mean, the fire was, he could see the fire. So they launched, he called 30-second call, and they were gone. The fire was heading directly for their abode, and the firemen told them on Sunday that if the wind hadn't shifted in 20 hours into the fire, their house would have been gone in 10 minutes.
Oh my.
So it shifted to the northeast, headed towards Helena, and missed their home literally by less than half a mile. So that's seriously happy. And having talked to him, there were no homes lost. Thousands of acres were burned. An old building and an old shed were the only thing that were consumed by the fire. But you don't think about stuff like that till it hits you right square in the face. So they're going to have a new procedure set up for future events like that. So that's a big happiness.
That's a big happy dollar.
You bet.
Thank you. Any other happy dollars? Yes, John Townsend. John, you're muted.
Nobody can read lips, I guess. 2 weeks ago, we had our meeting, with the scholars, and we were lucky enough to have 7 of our 8 there, including many parents. I think, and I hope that all of you received an actual video that was produced by Elsa Hahn, who is the 8th, who somehow had technical difficulties, who otherwise would have made it. Did a sweet job in sending her thanks and introductions. All of them sent a note of appreciation to all of you in the club for your generosity, for their scholarships. It was a very appreciative group. It was special to see that. So I just want to offer a happy dollar for a full 8 appearances and thank yous from all of them.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other happy dollars? And any sad dollars?
This is actually Gayleen. I was going to put a happy dollar in. I hope everybody had their flags out over the weekend, because it was my birthday, or otherwise Flag Day. So that was something special. And yeah, I just wanted to put it in a happy dollar for a nice birthday with the family and close to home, which is okay. So.
Great. Thank you, Gayleen. Matt Rowe, I have a question for you. I was not part of a conversation about how we capture happy dollars and sad dollars electronically. Debbie Trader's keeping track.
Yeah, maybe I'll clue in everybody. I just sent Patrick a note. I don't know if we should think about, given that Zoom calls may be in our future for a while, is there a way we could do this electronically? I know Dennis is working on contributions via Facebook, but I wonder if there's a way we could really make it easier to separate people from their wallets by having some sort of electronic virtual happy dollar process. But I don't know if that's feasible or not, but something to think about maybe.
Yeah, I have no idea how that would work.
Venmo or something like that, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll ask my 23-year-old daughter how that works.
There you go. There you go.
Set up a PayPal account for Rotary.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Deb can let people know just how much they owe. I see her all
She's got it jotting it down. Yes.
Okay. Any sad dollars? John? You muted again.
Sorry, can I go back to happy before we go to sad?
Sure.
I forgot something. Since Lisa is here, which we're nice to see her rejoin us here, wanted to congratulate her on a wonderful virtual commencement of the most recent graduate class. It was awfully well done. It's amazing the creativity and the joy that's come about through these strange times with these virtual presentations. I found it extremely special and inspiring. I had a particular connection with this group as it was one of the groups that I spent time doing interviewing with while I was on that RAC team, the admissions committee, and interviewed some of those kids. Remember the first day after their white coat ceremony, eating over at the Leoki Museum, and now they're graduated and on their way to residency. So congratulations, Lisa, awfully well done. It was very special.
Thank you. That's great. And that reminds me, I will give 25 happy dollars for our graduates. It really was an amazing effort to get them through those last couple of months with enough credits to graduate and all the things that they needed. And so it was good to be able to celebrate with them.
Maybe did I tell you that was $5 I'm contributing for your record?
That's awesome. And I'll do 25 for each graduate.
Awesome. Thank you. Joe, did you have a happy dollar?
No happy dollars.
Okay. All right. Any sad dollars from the group? Okay. If not, I turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who contributed and you did contribute because Deb has the records and we will figure out a way to electronically take your monies here. Sooner rather than later. So with that, we're really excited for our speaker today. Pat, are you introducing? I know you and Mike went back and forth. So who's?
Yeah, I can introduce. It's a pleasure to have Lance Leonhard join us here today. Lance has been with the county since 2014. He was an assistant district attorney and most recently was the administrative assistant director to Brad Carter. He became interim director in January and very, as jointly shared by so many, he was named the executive director of the county in April. And I thought it'd be great to have him share with us some of his goals and thoughts for the future, as well as some of the hurdles he has to cross right now with the county. So with that, Lance Leonhard, welcome.
Thank you, Representative Snyder. Very kind introduction. Thanks for having me. As Pat said, just elaborating a little bit, I'm not a Wausau or Wausau Metro Marathon County native. I was born and raised in the Fox Valley. My transplant here, I left, I met my wife in Eau Claire, and then She followed me to law school for some reason in Milwaukee. I stayed there for a year before really, as Pat said, came back to really follow my passion, the initial passion, which was working for the state of Wisconsin as a prosecutor in our criminal justice system. And I've been here ever since, and I can't think of another place I'd like to live. My wife and I have 2 children. My son is 9. My daughter is turning 7 in July. So they keep us busy. Thankfully, this last weekend, I should throw in a happy dollar. My parents took our kids, which was fantastic. So it was a really happy weekend I was put to work doing yard work, but that being said, happy to be here today. And I don't know if anyone recalls, this is actually my second Rotary meeting I've ever attended. I attended, I believe it was in 2014 or 2015. It was so gracious of your club to invite me after I was recognized as a 20 under 40 recipient for through the Daily Herald locally. And I still remember going to that meeting, and I was really struck by the camaraderie, which again I see today, and all the great things that your club has accomplished. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. And lastly, before I start, my son would be very disappointed if I didn't pass along our thanks. Our family enjoys fishing, and we have been to the Bluegill Bay Pond far too many times. So he'll be happy to know that I passed along our thanks, and his scout troop. I'm a den leader, so I marshal around a bunch of kids every once in a while down at that park. So your efforts are greatly appreciated. So in terms of goals, I think Pat laid it out well. Let's talk about positive stuff. Goals for the county moving forward. You know, I've been in this role since Brad left at the end of 2019, and I think there are a couple big things that really are on the county's horizon that are really exciting. So in terms of who I really am trying in this new role to make sure that I'm following directive and really keeping in mind kind of some my main cohorts, or the main people I need to make sure we're delivering for. It's the board, it's our county employees, and it's the public. Quite simply, the board, they're my boss. I'm blessed with having the largest county board in the country, 38 members. So there's never a shortage of things I should work on. In terms of employees, we have 750 employees who are, quite honestly, I couldn't ask for better staff. And my job when it boils down to it, is make sure all those people have the tools, resources, and leadership they need to be successful. And then for the public, like all of you, my goal is always to continue to improve the quality of services that we deliver. But, as we balance between long-term planning and short-term, deliverables in terms of the programs that we're delivering to the citizens, I think it's really important that we look at what does that future look like, even in a post-COVID world. I think that's really important. And it's not going to surprise you. I certainly know Representative Snyder understands this. It shouldn't be a surprise that governments at all levels are constantly under pressure to make sure they're controlling their spending. And that's a really good thing. Everyone is served better by efficient and effective government, whether it's local government, state, or federal government. So long-term financial planning is really something that at the county level, I think we have a lot of opportunity to improve. And that has been one of my areas when I built my work plan for 2020, and I was finalizing it in January and February. The whole first page was devoted, and second page was largely devoted to the idea of doing a better job as it relates to capital planning. As it turns out, the second to last item on page 6 was a thing called COVID planning, but that's kind of supplanted all those other things. But as it relates to capital planning, Marathon County, in terms of our roadways, I think roadways is one really big thing we need to make sure we have a long-term strategy. We have the largest number of roadway miles of any county in the state. In fact, we have over double the average miles within a county in the state. And our funding that we allocate for roadway maintenance, we're just about in the lowest quartile. of funding per lane, per capita rather. Similarly, when you look at state aids, which are really a lot of state aids go to roadway maintenance, we're in that lowest quartile as well. So we need to make sure we have a long-term sustainable funding strategy, because our roadways are absolutely fundamental to our business success, our local economy. And if we don't take a good hard look at that, I think we're going to be making some tough choices that we don't want to make. We should get out in front of that and have really a 2050 plan. And I've been working with our board to start to put together that plan. But that's no small effort. Similarly, as it relates to capital, Marathon County is really fortunate. We have a great many facilities where we deliver all the services that we deliver. And if you think about just in the city of Wausau, we actually have 8 county facilities. From our courthouse to our North Central Healthcare Campus to Department of Social Services. We have multiple locations on West Street, our library, River Drive. So we have 8 buildings in the major metro area. And I think it's really, there's an opportunity for us to cut that in half in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's really, I think that's an important goal to have. It's different than what our approach has been in the past, but more efficient operations not only helps taxpayers because it allows us to deliver those services in a more cost-effective way, but I think there's a real great opportunity to co-locate services that, you know, if you put yourself in the shoes of a consumer, for example, social services. Right now, our social services department is located on Thomas Street. A lot of individuals that receive services through social services, likewise, there's opportunities for them to receive services through North Central Healthcare, whether they're mental health, addiction services, or counseling services. Similarly, our health department, and both our health department and North Central are located at the North Central Healthcare Campus. So the first significant facility relocation and consolidation that I'm working towards is moving social services down to that North Central Healthcare Campus, which again, I think it's a win-win across the board for taxpayers, but then also for the people that we serve. And like I said, over time, if we can move from 8 facilities in the major metro area to 4, we have a real opportunity to be a real driver of economic development in the major Wausau area. When you look at our River Drive facility, we have a good number of staff down on River Drive. That's a high potential economic development area, and it would be great from my perspective to find ways to make better use of that. So we've been meeting with the Wausau Chamber, the Wausau Opportunity Zone representatives, Mr. Gadorzi, to really talk about what that might look like. We participated with the city in the South Riverfront development plan. So, I mean, I think those are really great things that over the next 5 years, that downtown area could look fundamentally different if you consider River Drive being repurposed as well as the social services building. So those are, from a facility perspective, facility planning, that's really, I think, an exciting time for Marathon County government. The other kind of the flip side of that long-term financial planning coin from facility and capital planning is operational planning. How do we control costs through operational spending? And one of the first things when I came to work for Brad was I took a look at the way that we approached continuous improvement, process improvement. And I wanted to develop a plan where we could really institutionalize that and make that part of who we are in terms of a culture. So that was actually my first hire here at the county, as I brought in someone from GM. Her office is right across on the other side of the wall from mine. She's our organizational excellence program manager. Again, she came to us from GM, and the goal is really to drive process improvement throughout the entire organization, rather from the top. I always said when Brad and I would go to meetings, if staff are waiting for Brad or myself to come up with the best ideas to improve the services that we deliver, they're waiting for the wrong people in the room to come up with the decisions. We need to have, you know, people empowered at all levels, of our organization to do that. So that's a big part of controlling operational costs. Another part is technology. I think we've learned a lot, as has everyone in this COVID environment. And for years, we operated under the kind of assumption that for us to deliver quality service and quality customer service, that meant me sitting on one side of a desk or on one side of the phone talking to one of you on the other side. And I think we've started to realize that's really not the case. There's a lot of opportunities where you can provide quality service, in fact, even better service to people through other forms of technology, self-service platforms. If our website, you know, it's been the bane of my existence. Our website needs to, my mantra is it needs to look and feel more like Amazon and less like Encyclopedia Britannica. And then you looking at opportunities to utilize artificial intelligence. I tell the story when I go to meet our IT people, and I'm sure they're getting upset with me, but you know, my Nest thermostat broke this last winter, and it was cold, so I needed a thermostat. And it was like 2 in the morning. I went online, and I knew I was not talking to Bob, even though it said Bob. I was chatting with a chat bot, and it asked me a series of questions and worked through the algorithm. And at the end, nothing worked. And they said, well, we're mailing you a new thermostat. I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to do that, but those are big goals, and it causes us, it's going to require us rather to flip a switch in how we think. So our long-term financial planning is really going to have to be pretty robust to capture those things, but I think we certainly have the staff capability to do it. The other thing you know, it's not a fun thing to talk about, but you know, right now everyone's talking about the epidemic or a pandemic, and we're talking about COVID. But if you would have asked anyone in county government the epidemic we were dealing with before January, we would always have told you it's opioids and methamphetamine, and the reality is that's still there too. As Representative Snyder said, I actually came to Wausau to be a prosecutor in 2006, and I spent 5 years as the county's drug prosecutor, and I went from a place where we had 0 heroin cases to when I left in 2014, I was prosecuting multiple opioid overdose death cases every year. The same thing is true with methamphetamine. We just saw our case numbers explode. But it wasn't just a justice system problem. I had the good fortune, I left the prosecutor's office and became a lawyer for the county. And one of my main jobs as a lawyer for the county was I took on handling child abuse and neglect cases. So I did all I could to go to court and advocate to keep kids safe. And it turns out heroin and meth followed me from the DA's office to child protection. We had in 2014 and 2015, the number of cases we had was triple our 10-year average, our previous 10-year average. And that was driven by that epidemic as it relates to drug use. And that's not going to go away. It's broader than a justice system problem, and not just impacts our jail, but it impacts everything. Child protection, we deal with it in all the services that we deliver, and we need to make sure we continue to make efforts in that respect. And shameless plug for Representative Snyder. He did a lot to help us as it relates to foster care in his work with the legislature, but we saw a huge increase in the need for foster families as a result of that. So we need to make sure we take a holistic approach. It's one of the core principles in our strategic plan, core objectives, I should say, to combat that epidemic. And when COVID is taking our attention right now, but we certainly need to shift it back in the very near future, or at least make sure we don't lose sight of that struggle. And then the last one, I mean, for those of you that business leaders, this is not unique. Attracting and retaining top talent. We need a real strategy to do that. I talk about it every time I have a board meeting, even though our last executive committee meeting was dominated by other topics. In our last HR finance meeting, the same way. I always go back to, all right, I at least get one plug in for keeping talent attraction and retention on their minds, because if we don't keep our best and brightest and make sure we have a strategy to get more, we're not going to be able to do the great work that we need to be able to do. So I think our strategy on that is both internal and external. And from an internal perspective, we need to make sure we keep our compensation plan competitive. We need to have a strong professional development strategy, and we're building that. And then we need to have a strong organizational culture. And another shameless plug, Mike did a lot to help us with videos highlighting what it means to work for the county, and we use those as recruiting strategies. So internally, I think we're doing pretty well, but we certainly have some growth there. Externally, I think everybody, certainly on this call, recognizes that any one employer in a region isn't going to be successful if we don't have a successful regional strategy, if we don't have strong education systems, and if we don't have an inclusive community. So from the county's perspective, we've tried to do our part to assist in those efforts. We were one of the funders of the regional strategic economic development plan through the chamber. We funded we provided some of the funding for that talent attraction website, which we use in recruiting. And I was just on a call this morning with UW Stevens Point Wausau campus representatives talking about what we can do to make sure we keep that campus sustainable and that we continue to attract students to the area. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we do make some headroads into the life report's recommendations around inclusivity, diversity, and belonging. That's really important. If you're not delivering on those, if people don't feel that in your community, you're just not going to be as successful as you need to be. So those are all the things from my perspective that are a whole lot more fun to talk about than COVID, because they're things that, COVID certainly has taken a lot of our focus. And if you have questions about it, I can give you the rundown there. But in terms of long-term strategic planning and things we need to make sure we don't lose sight of, at least from my perspective, those were the things that I've articulated for the board and that they've talked to me about. And they're going to take a lot of effort moving forward. Again, for not only for county government to be successful, but for residents within the county. So if you have questions about that, I can certainly provide additional information, or if you do want to talk COVID, I'll do my best.
Lance, this is Matt. I don't necessarily want to talk about COVID, but there is a question that's kind of current, I guess. And that is, I've picked up that there's a little bit of arm wrestling about an ordinance that the county was trying to adopt, I believe, and the chamber wasn't on board. And honestly, I didn't really follow it over the last 4 or 5 days. So could you give us an update as to where that stands and what the county's perspective was and what you see going forward? Sure.
Certainly a timely question. Short answer is to where it is. Any ordinance development was put on hold. The executive committee referred that ordinance development back to our Health and Human Services Committee, awaiting the results of a work group that is taking place that's being formed at the state level through our association, the Wisconsin Counties Association. In terms of context, the reason that discussion started, with the invalidation of the Safer at Home order from the state and an attorney general's opinion, an interim attorney general's opinion that came out shortly thereafter, there's a lot of discussion through our state association and counties around the state that each county really should have a local communicable disease ordinance, an enforcement ordinance. And the vast majority do not have them. Some did, some did not, and moved very quickly to essentially cut and paste from the state statutes into a local ordinance. Door County is an example of that, a really broad framework within the state of Wisconsin. The local health officers under Chapter 252, with Section 25203, I believe, have really broad powers under the state statute. So some counties just literally cut, paste, put it into a local ordinance, and we're done. Other counties did not feel as though they needed to have such an ordinance or felt that their current ordinances were appropriate, and essentially adopted safer at home county version. So that would be Dane County, Milwaukee County are the two most notably. The Marathon County took a fundamentally different approach from those others. Our corporation counsel, if you know Scott Corbett, he was my former boss, love him to death. And he said, look, our problem isn't communicable disease. Everyone's talking COVID. Let's write a COVID ordinance. Narrow, let's be very narrow. And we wanted to take an approach that was kind of the opposite of safer at home. So how that worked is we did reach out to the chamber. At the end of May, we actually had our first kickoff meeting of ordinance development kickoff meeting in May, and kind of talked about what we thought were the goals of that ordinance. Again, to be narrowly tailored to the problem at hand. And I'll give you one example. The safer at home, as you'll all recall, there were a lot of businesses. If you were essential, you were open, and if you were non-essential, you're closed. And it really wasn't tied to, if I operated Lance's bar, I operate my own bar or a resort, and I'm closed because I'm not essential. Even if I would have implemented the best social distancing practices, erected physical barriers, and reduced my capacity to really follow WEDC, CDC, and any other acronym that came out giving recommendations. I could follow them all, but I'm still closed because there was that dichotomy of essential and non. So we didn't like that. We said, really what should drive our response is circumstances on the ground. And I think we had really good meetings with the chamber, both at the end of May, and then we had another June 8th, Monday, June 8th. And I think there was widespread agreement on that idea. While we were formulating that framework for those narrowly tailored responses, that's when all the other counties in the state were having similar conversations. So our Wisconsin Counties Association, our state association of which we're a member, said, hey, we're gonna form a work group with local health officers, members from the counties association, corporation councils, the restaurant association, and there are some other members as well, to really take a look at this and give some guidance, because we don't want to have 72 different approaches. So in our last meeting with the chamber on the 8th, we said, that our county board chair explained that and said, we're going to have to put this on hold because, we don't want to be doing something that not only the chamber didn't like, and they did tell us they had concerns with the ordinance very clearly in our meeting. So that was the resolution when we left the meeting on the 8th, that we knew the ordinance was going to be put on hold. To your point, Matt, certainly that got a lot of press, the stuff that happened after, but quite honestly, what transpired between the 8th and the 11th of the executive committee, in my mind, I knew the outcome of what was going to happen on the 8th. Nothing substantially different happened at the meeting on the 11th, but certainly I think there's a lot of concern within the public, and rightly so. We want to make sure that the county's approach is the right one, not only from a legal perspective, but one of my big concerns is absolutely our business community. We need to make sure that our recovery is as quick as it can be and sustainable. And if our ordinance hampers that in any way, well, it's not successful. So we're really waiting for that work group. I was actually on a call right before this. You invited me to this meeting, talking about just that and kind of refining what that timeline looks like from the counties association. They're looking at 4 to 6 weeks at this point. So hopefully we'll get some guidance from them, and then we'll take the same approach we took last time, which was sit down with the chamber and business leaders and say, where's what does this mean? How can we find the right solution for Marathon County? I know our health officer has been talking with the representatives from our local hospital system. So it's a good thing. I mean, certainly it got a lot of press, but quite honestly, from my perspective, I knew that was going to happen on the 8th, that it was going to get referred back. I don't know if
Thanks.
that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Lance, this is John Townsend. Thanks for coming to address us, and congratulations on your new position. And thanks for the presentation of your content today. It's really informative. I'm curious with, again, it's related to COVID, but with probable loss of tax revenue, and also what we hear nationally about the challenges nationally with providing state and local government support, you know, with emergency funding that's gone to many others, but I don't know that it's gone yet to state and local government support. Where does that sit for Marathon County? What do you know, and how's that impacting you, and what's the future look like in getting some support, and how things are going to work with potential loss of budget? Obviously, it means some constraints in operations and whatnot.
Thanks. That's a really good question. Certainly, our budgets are going to be significantly impacted. In fact, we made a presentation, the finance director and myself, to our local human resources, finance, and property committee. We did that in May, and we had forecast numbers that predicted for the remainder of 2020, we were projecting just shy of $5.2 million deficit, primarily driven by three things: sales tax, reductions in property tax revenue, and then reductions in investment income. And this is probably never a good idea in a meeting, but I'm going to try to utilize technology here. I think I can share my screen, but if it doesn't work, I'll tell you where to find it. But I actually just wrote a report for the county board on kind of where we are and what, in my mind, was the steps we needed to take. And it was for our finance committee. I presented it. They didn't approve it, they just received it, and I'm going to make a similar presentation. So bear with me. I'm going to go to the county website, and I'm going to try to do this. Hopefully you guys can see the county website screen. And if you go to departments at the top and click on administrator, ignore the fact that picture is about 6 years old, so it makes me look a lot less gray. But here's my 2020 budget repair plan. And like I said, I presented this last week, and I'm going to be making another presentation. So you'll see I talk about sales tax revenue, property tax shortfalls, and miscellaneous revenue, which is really that investment income. But overall, we're projecting that $5.2 million shortfall, which is right here, predict a $5.2 million deficit over the remainder of 2020. The HR committee, HR finance, directed me to come up with a plan to close that deficit, cut it in half. So I went through and I charted out kind of what our expenditure assumptions were. And the county's it's an interesting organization in that we have 21 individual departments, and then we have 4 departments that really operate as government. We operate in concert with other municipal forms of government. So a good example, North Central Healthcare is really a county department. Marathon County is the largest of the 3 members, but we partner with Lincoln and Langlade, and our county tax levy goes to that organization. So similarly with Central Wisconsin Airport, that's actually a partnership with Portage County. So our approach needed to be actually department led. I couldn't just from I didn't think from the perspective of administration come down with, this is what we're going to do across the board. We needed to have a department specific response. For example, our health department is going to have has had a much different 2020 than our highway department. There's a huge increase in need for services through the health department, and our highway department has not seen that. Similarly, a great example is in our sheriff's office. Because of a lot of the guidance from the state and the correctional systems and the way that court has changed, our sheriff's office in our jail has seen opportunities to do things differently that actually are going to save money, whereas our health department, as you might guess, with the things that they need to do in terms of contact tracing and following up on confirmed cases or individuals that were identified as close contacts. And it's our responsibility for those individuals, if they don't have appropriate housing to isolate or quarantine themselves, the county is responsible for providing that, and then ensuring that people have adequate food as well. So there's a lot of costs there. So it needed to be a department-led approach. So I put together a survey to all departments, and I asked a series of questions. But what you'll see from this report, and the appendix does have the survey that I put out. It really seeks to accomplish the closing that deficit, cutting it in half by that department specific, in a department specific way. And here's the process I go through and tell you, tell the board and I tell the public, the way that I went about gathering the information. And this is really for 2020, these are the strategies that we're going to employ. And you'll see I came close, but I didn't quite hit my 2.6 million, at least not yet. I'm going to keep working on that, but we got 2.45 for the million for the remainder of 2020. Personnel and cost reductions. There's a number of positions that if they're not critical, we're going to see if we can find different ways to continue to deliver services and hold off on filling some vacancies. We have, as just a general rule, in an organization of 750 employees, we do have a significant amount of turnover. So we generally come in having some personnel cost reductions regardless in any budget year. But for example, in our library's been closed, as many of you know, for some period of time. We have drive-up services are currently offered, but there are some departments that have seen reductions in service need. So we've been trying to look at ways to not fill positions in those areas. Right now, I'm working without a deputy, which has caused me to work a lot of late nights, and I've made the decision that I need to move forward with that recruitment. But that's an example of holding off certainly a little bit longer than we would have otherwise. Travel and training. I had implemented a suspension of all non-critical work-related travel very early. I think I did that in either the first or maybe the second week of March. And then contractual and material savings, I'll give you an example of that. In light of things that were happening, we took a pretty aggressive stance relative to negotiating some of the contracts we had, and particularly in our highway department, we were able to negotiate material costs in a more advantageous way than we originally budgeted. And then I already alluded to this, but inmate housing, just on the way the criminal justice system is working now, we're seeing that's $250,000, almost $250,000 of reductions in cost savings there. And that's what really, of all of the areas, that's the one that intrigues me and interests me the most, because I think we are clearly doing things differently on a short-term basis as it relates to COVID. But I think there's real opportunity to study and think about how we might be able to continue those practices, because I don't know if anyone has a different experience than mine, but it's been my experience. I don't think we've had a significant shift in the public perception relative to public safety. I think our law enforcement officers are doing a great job, and as they always have done. And we just have seen there might be some opportunities to continue some of those practices. Moving into 2021, the forecast we're seeing right now, actually, again, 2021, we're looking at a 5.7, just shy of $6 million shortfall. So we need to, it isn't just 2020 where we need to make some changes, it's 2021 as well. So I kind of lay out some of those strategies, and you'll already see, I talked about this one early on, facility consolidation, and also improving our use of technology. We're going to need to do that well, because if you see up here, this is my favorite graph. That red line is not a line you want to be on. That's our working capital fund balance. If we just closed our budget, our projected shortfalls using working capital, we'd go from about 25 million down to about 5 by 2023 before those forecasts really start to improve. And I think that's an important thing that sometimes people don't fully appreciate about government. You know, the reality is private business, man, they got hit a lot faster as it relates to COVID. And, you know, we saw unemployment go to record levels. Haven't seen those since the Great Depression. And government really it lags in terms of the hit, but it also really lags in terms of the bounce back. And that's why, you know, I think kind of more updated forecast numbers really show that some private businesses are expecting to bounce back even in Q1, Q2 of 2021. And government really isn't projected to do that until kind of later in 2022 and 2023. I know just in calls from the state, and Representative Snyder can elaborate, I'm sure. On the county side, on the local government side, we're really looking at significant reductions in state aid. Wisconsin was really fortunate in that we had a significant rainy day fund at the state, which was great, but it rained, and it rained hard, and they did things necessary to kind of stem that tide on the short term, but you can't do that each and every year. So that is the COVID budget update, but that was my first attempt at doing that, and that happened, interestingly, we were putting together that financial plan. If you would have told me in January that we'd be responding to a pandemic while also planning concurrently for the potential flooding from a tropical storm hitting central Wisconsin, I would have probably referred you to our wonderful healthcare professionals at North Central, but that was a couple of weeks ago what we were doing. So I hope that answers your question. That was rather long-winded, but that's my old lawyer hat on. I talk a lot.
So Lance, just to follow up though on one piece, has there been any developments with state and local government emergency funding support? You know, not unlike other citizens and businesses have had. You know, it's been argued about by many at the national level. I know Governor Cuomo in New York is quite eloquent about it.
Yeah, actually, sorry, I missed that. Absolutely, there are direct funding streams that have been allocated to local governments and to counties in the state of Wisconsin. On the federal level, there's money being directly allocated for things like contact tracing that I talked about. I actually have a spreadsheet. I think it's sitting on my table over there. Actually, no, it's right here. That talks about some of those dollars that Marathon County is likely to get. So local testing and coordination, Marathon County is looking at an allocation of almost $200,000, but again, our expenditures are going to be over that. And a lot of these funding streams come with, you know, the important thing right now is that they're not capturing lost revenues, they're only for expenditures. So you'll see from the budget report that I just talked about, a lot of our budget problem is driven by lost revenues. But there are expenditures, and the state recently allocated $2.2 million of CARES funding to Marathon County, again, for expenditures. But between all the various pots of money, we're going to be looking at making sure we make application for those non-budgeted expenditures, whether it's through emergency management dollars, FEMA dollars, CARES funding, the broad CARES funding for contact tracing and things of that nature, and then the $2.2 million. But just in our call this morning, a lot of counties are really struggling on the lost revenue side. Our sales tax estimates just came in from the Wisconsin Counties Association. We are down 12.8% in April and May from 2019, which is a significant amount of money. When we budget about $13.5 million annually. So if we're down 12%, again, we're still looking at that in excess of 1.5 million, or right around 1.5 million. So things are not as bad as we're initially looking, but our revenue side is hit really hard. Marathon County, I give our department heads a lot of credit. In some respects, we might have been better off from a reimbursement perspective if we went out and just hired all new people to do COVID-related work, rather than take them from lower priority projects and redeploy them. Because under the current contemplation in these various funding streams, those constitute, those staff dollars, those personnel dollars, were budgeted. So they're not non-budgeted new expenditures. But my direction to county staff has been, it's our obligation. We manage this not only as a county, but we need to be good partners at the state, and even a good partner at the federal level. If we go out and just increase our spending significantly, rather than redeploying existing assets in a intelligent, fiscally mindful way, that's really not helping us weather this storm as a country, quite honestly. So I have no doubt there are some things we did locally that we could have taken a different approach and got more money, but that really wasn't our goal. Our goal was to kind of take that more holistic approach.
Thank you.
Any other last questions in the final minute or so? Well, Lance, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks for everything you're doing with the county. Good luck in the challenging days ahead. And, I think I speak for all of us that I say, if you can survive working with Brad Carger for multiple years, you can get through anything that is thrown at you. We all appreciate that. So.
Well, thank you. I did have a text from him that said, if the next thing that happens are locusts, you did something to somebody. So.
Exactly. That is exactly true. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. A really good meeting. Great to hear everything that's going on at the county level and beyond in this challenging time. So with that, let's finish the meeting with the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will
build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial for all concerned?
I see some of you doing it on the mute wise. I guess that works too. So. Anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks again, Lance, for joining us. Thanks everybody for a great meeting, and we'll just talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Have a great day, everybody.